So I've owned this ZR for more than a month now, and there are certain things which I really like about it, like which is something which I've enjoyed more than my Lumix or my Sony cameras, and definitely my earlier Nikon cameras. So in this video, let's talk about 5 such things which really impressed me about the Nikon ZR, and certain things which actually were kind of not a disappointment, but were certainly letdowns. So let's get the obvious thing out of the way. The screen, 4-inch screen on a camera like this, where I can, even while driving, I don't have to look too closely or divert too much attention to it. I'm able to see what I need to see with clear indication of my shutter angle, my aperture, my ISO, exposure, even the histogram or waveform, whichever you're choosing, you would be able to easily see it. And that's a very big point when it comes to someone who used to rigging their camera to get that information in a reasonable format or way to look into it, right? So that saves a lot of weight on the camera, as well as those things are expensive. Like buying an external monitor, if you don't need it, they could be quite expensive. So screen, a huge point. The brightness, 1000 nits, or the way they've configured it, it's just perfect. And it's really hard to use other cameras after using this one. Although you get used to it, like once I pick up another camera and use it for more than a couple of hours, I'm back in that system. But still, if I were to buy any camera from now onwards and there was an option to buy a bigger screen, I definitely would buy it. So yeah, screen would be the first thing. The second thing would have to be all the formats that this camera supports. Now, I know you would say that, it's obvious that it's a R3D or RED camera and it does ProRes and other things, but no, not everyone needs it. And especially for a video like what I'm doing right now, you don't need R3D formats and stuff like that. But if you think about it, the quality difference that you get in a R3D format compared to H.265 or H.265, H.264 or any other format, and especially comparing it with the 10-bit H.265, which I'm used to get on my S-Log3 enabled Sony cameras, although they were great, until you actually try the R3D. Because I've got fantastic footage from even my ZV-E10 Mark II, which does the same thing, but in crop format. But when you're shooting on a ZR, you actually don't need to worry about, or at least not worry too much about exposing to the right white balance. And that alone is such a powerful thing when you think about it. And obviously it's R3D, which is a RAW format, which means you can technically choose the ISO later as well. But from what I've experienced, as well as what I've heard from other people, it's not actually allowing you to choose whatever format you want to choose or whatever ISO you want to choose. It's still limited to those 2 base ISO, which is great. Like 800 and 6400 is very usable ISOs. Don't get me wrong. Let me just order my lunch.
Please move forward.
Hello. Was just checking if my mic is turned on. Although I can see the monitor and with the waves moving, but it's always good to check when you resuming recording. So yeah, let's discuss the second bit, which is multiple formats and what that means for a person who's just doing YouTube videos for now. Like I'm not doing any wedding shoots or things like that. So for me, it allows me to create different looks in post-production, which means I don't have to think about it right now how I want the footage to look, which is just fantastic. And the amount of detail that this footage have in R3D is good in the sense that even if I'm using or stretching the ISO to, let's assume 12,800, which is not native, I'm still able to control that noise by just adding some noise reduction, because it's a raw format, so there's no noise reduction implied or applied while you're shooting that footage. So having that that much information allows that to be processed quite smoothly compared to my other cameras when I'm using noise reduction, and that could be reflected easily on the export times that I get with the R3D. Now, saying that, that brings me to something which I'll mention later, which would be not a quirk, but a negative aspect of owning a ZR and shooting in R3D, which is the big...
So there's that one for you.
Thanks, man.
Thank you. Have a good one.
Which is big file sizes. But again, it's not surprising. It's raw, it's R3D, and the quality you get out of this camera with that format is enough for me to justify it. And there's a workaround which I've figured out, which I think a lot of people have figured out as well, that you can actually store your footage in lower formats but still retain that quality. Now, we'll discuss that in another video, but moving on to the next bit, which I really like about this camera, is the fact that this body is comparatively very light and small, especially comparing it with the things like Nikon Z6 or Z5 II. Like, it's heavier than my Z50 Mark II, of course, and I do love the grip on my Z50, but the fact that you can take off the small rig cage on it, which I currently have, which gives me more grip, and just carry it with maybe a wrist strap, then it's very light and nimble and a good looking camera. Like, it looks great, especially with that big screen. It's usable, and it just makes it very versatile in the sense of, like, if I don't want to rig it too big, or if I just want to keep the setup small, and if you think about all that camera is capable of doing, then this is a fantastic package. And although people hate that there's no grip on it, but my S9 had no grip on it. I got a small rig cage that fixed that issue. Same goes with this one. Like, you can always put a cage on it and rig it, but for it to be that capable in the terms of video creation or recording, and that to be that slim, is really fantastic. And that comes with the best part, which is it essentially doesn't overheat. And that's one of the things which blows my mind still, that it shoots 6K raw format video in a CFX Express Type B card, which are prone to be known for their overheating because of the data transfer rate to be that high and, you know, whatever goes around it. But for this camera not have a fan and still not overheat and deliver the quality that it delivers, it's just mind-blowing. And that's the thing which impresses me still, because I've got my Lumix S9 that's heated on me within like 20 minutes of recording in the same temperature we are right now. I've got a ZV-E1 which heats, maybe it'll go to 30 or 40 minutes, but it still heats, which it's not a big deal if you're creating like short content. But if you're just talking to the camera, having a podcast, or just plugged it in your system, or sitting around and you want to record long form video, even in harsh scenarios, then this camera seems to be working better than most other cameras for the price as well as for the type of body it is, right? So that's the next thing which I wanted to discuss, which I really like about it. And moving on to the fourth one, although fourth could be that it doesn't overheat, and third could be the body that is flexible and versatile. But moving on to the fourth one is being a Nikon camera or Z mount camera. This mount does have a lot of compatibility with other lens mounts. Like, currently I'm using one of the best lenses I've ever used on any camera, which is a 24 GM from Sony. It's 24 mm 1.4. I've got it on wide open aperture, and I'm able to use this on this Nikon ZR by using adapter. Currently I'm using a newer adapter. I had a Viltrox adapter which is cheaper than the newer adapter, which was faster, but actually bricked two of my lenses. And but then I researched it, and apparently it's one of the things which Viltrox adapter got multiple reviews on, that it bricked either the camera or the lens units, and hence I was like quick to get rid of it. I returned it. It was within the return time period, and I mentioned the same reason. But newer adapter is slower, it's quirky, but it still works. Like, if you look at this, and I just moved away, the focus is usable, especially for videos. Like I don't need that quick jump between focus. I can wait for the focus to catch up to it. And generally, the focus is really good for photos as well. Like I don't see that to be an issue. And at least this adapter doesn't break my lenses and allows me to use my existing Sony lenses which I have. And I do prefer Sony lenses in a lot of scenarios, especially because they're very light. They are very capable in a lot of senses, including having a lot of options like a variable aperture, like that ring around it, as well as the fact that being a E-mount, which is very old and a lot of people have bought into that system, marketplace usually is flooded with E-mount lenses, which could be a decent option if you're just starting out. And hence, having a camera with the ability to adapt to different lenses is great, because you essentially can buy an adapter, a camera, and you don't need to buy another lens if you already own Canon or Sony lenses, right? So that's actually pretty big deal, because when I was doing a switch or trial of my Lumix system, I had to buy other lenses, and there were not too many L-mount lenses either way available, so I had to buy native lenses, which can get quite pricey. And that's one of the things which I really appreciate Nikon doing. Hopefully this doesn't break my camera or lens. But yeah, that's the fourth thing which I really like about the Nikon ZR, the ability to adapt to different things. And moving on to the fifth thing, which could be seen as a, yeah, I know it, but what's the big deal? But for me, it is like that would have to be having the same sensor as Z6 III, or I believe it's the same sensor as S1 Mark II as well, which is semi-stacked or partially stacked sensor for photos and for hybrid environment. Because more often than not, I find myself taking just one camera when I'm out and about with family and with my son. So in that case, I prefer taking Lumix S9 because of the stability. But the fact that I can take a R3D footage and that looks really amazing in mostly scenarios, I prefer, if I can take, I want to take this camera now. And the fact that the photos that are coming out of this camera are so good, it's just such a big deal from a cine camera. I wouldn't call it cine. I have not used FX3 or FX30. I don't intend to rig it up to make it a cine camera. But when I say cine, or let's say content creator camera, which is, I've used ZV-E10 Mark II multiple times, or multiple variations of it, or multiple bodies of it. And I've used ZV-E1. Although ZV-E10 Mark II is great, but the JPEGs that comes out of that camera are not even close to even Z50 Mark II, let alone ZR, or the new sensor that this camera does have. But the ZV-E1 had that full frame look and 12 megapixel sensor, which was fine for most of the work. But this one does have 24 megapixel, which is the right amount when it comes to megapixels, because anything above that increases the size of the photo a significant amount as well. Like I had a A7C II, and shooting that on RAW was giving 50 MB of file sizes, and that too in compressed RAW format. So 24 megapixel is the right amount. Although I miss the EVF sometimes, but the interface on this for taking photos is good enough. Like you can adapt to it. And especially if you're just using one camera, it's not the worst to get used to. When it comes to negative aspects about the camera, there could be multiple things I can mention, including the body not being, it's not grippy enough, or it doesn't have that feel which Nikon is usually famous for. Because every camera that I've used from Nikon, including Z30, Z50 Mark I, Z50 Mark II, Z5, Z6 II, all had that ergonomic grip, which is just natural to hold, and it's very good and very amazing to take photos and, you know, just go on your photo walks with. But this one, even with the cage, it's a bit awkward. Like it's not as flexible, and that's one of the things which a lot of people have noted and notified. But then again, the use case of this camera is never to do those photo walks. It's just a hybrid when it needs to. Otherwise, it's a very capable red R3D camera. So that's why I don't think that's such a big deal. The next thing would have to be the big file sizes or the fact that CFX Express cards cost that much. So the workaround that you have for bigger file size is as soon as you're done with the footage for the day or for the project, you put it in your system, like plug it in. Don't even have to transfer it to your SSD. Just plug it in your reader, and then open DaVinci Resolve and export that footage once you've decided on the ISO, because that's the thing which you cannot change in later, or decide the white balance if you want to, or if you know about it. But export those files in a analog footage and just do a normal export like H.265. Make sure you do 10-bit export, and that way you can retain a lot of that color science behind R3D. And that's one of the things which I recently learned from other creators, that's what you can do. But the way I do it is, I do have a look that I like it's film bias from LUT from red, and that's the particular look which I like either way. So what I do is I export every footage the same day, and I do have a power grades available which I use. I just one click, and depending on day or night, I just have 2 or 3 power grades, and as soon as I click it, it grades it, and I just export it as H.265, and then I store that footage. So that way I do have a library of footage which I could have gotten in H.265 with a LUT either way. And that's fine for YouTube and other stuff like that. Like, I'm not creating a movie, and especially if it's not pre-planned, then you can always do that. And if you have a footage which you think you can use in future, feel free to do it in analog, or even store it like R3D if you have enough capacity. But that's something which I have to keep in mind, because the space in these cards fill up quite quickly. And the third thing would have to be, although the adapted lens work and everything works and the autofocus is mostly accurate, but it's not as good as predicting where it should focus, especially when comparing with cameras like Sony ZV-E1. Because I've seen footage of me creating content where I was just walking towards the car or away from the car, and the camera missed focus or lacked focus. Although I understand the scene was a bit complex because there's a lot of trees around, but there was no other human in the scene. If it were Sony, I don't think I'll ever see a missed focus on that sort of scenario. And that's where it comes to, like, although these are very tiny and minor things, you can check focus and make sure it's right before you actually finish for the day or finish for the shoot. But again, these minor things do make your overall experience good or bad. And there's other things like, it doesn't have open gate, and it doesn't have compressed RAW format. It doesn't have a lot of other things which other cameras have, like multiple ports to plug in your things. But that sort of thing doesn't bother me that much, because I knew what I'm buying when I bought it. And I bought it for R3D, and I love the footage that comes out of it, especially with a lens like this. And the fact that I'm using it without buying a new lens is just still great. So that's it for this video. And let me know if you bought a ZR or if you're planning to buy one, and what were your top 2 reasons of buying it or planning to buy it.